So I've lived in a lot of different parts all across the upstate, and there's places that I picked years ago that I probably wouldn't choose again today. Not because they're necessarily bad, but because once you actually live in an area, it hits a little bit different. It's one thing to drive through a neighborhood on a pretty Saturday afternoon and think, you know what, I could really see myself living here. Then it's another thing when that area becomes your grocery run, your morning commute, your school route, your dinner options, and that weekend routine, the place you come home to each and every single day. And there's one area on the list that surprises buyers all the time, because online, it honestly sounds perfect. But once real life kicks in, some people realize it's not quite what they pictured. So if you're thinking about moving to Greenville, Spartanburg, or anywhere in the upstate, this is one of those videos you really want to think through, because where you live affects way more than just your address. So if you're relocating here, you're buying your first home, you're moving across town, or trying to figure out which part of the upstate really makes the most sense, you're in the right place. Because the goal of this video really isn't to tell you which area is best, because honestly, that's not how real estate works. The goal is to help you avoid picking a place that looks great on paper, but it doesn't actually fit the way you live day to day. Because the online version of an area can really look amazing, but the Tuesday at 5:15 in traffic, well, that's where you really learn a lot about an area. So today we're going to be walking through some of the most talked about areas around Greenville and the upstate. From downtown Greenville, Simpsonville, Five Forks, Greenville's east side to Lake Keowee, Fountain Inn, Easley, Spartanburg, Travelers Rest, Anderson, all the way to Lake Hartwell, Pickens, Piedmont. And instead of just saying that this area is good or maybe this area is bad, I want to walk you through what each one truly feels like from a buyer's perspective, where it shines, maybe what the trade-offs are, and what type of person it probably fits best. And make sure you stick around to the end for Travelers Rest, because that's probably one of the areas that catches people off guard the most. People fall in love with the idea of it before they fully understand what the day-to-day reality looks like. And that difference truly matters. So here's the mistake I see buyers make all the time. They fall in love with an area based on one quick drive-through or a little research online. They look at an Instagram reel, maybe a YouTube video, or something a friend told them about. And listen, I get it. That's how most of us start. You see a cute downtown, you see a pretty park, a neighborhood with nice sidewalks, you grab lunch somewhere and think, this place has a really nice vibe. It's a little bit different, but buying a home can be a little bit different, because now that area has to work on a random Tuesday. It has to work when there's traffic that's backed up. It has to work when you forget something at the grocery store. It has to work when you're tired, you're running late, you're trying to get across town, and you're realizing that that restaurant you lived is now 28 minutes away. You just don't feel like making that drive anymore. So usually that's when buyers start realizing, okay, maybe what I thought I wanted and what I thought actually fits my lifestyle aren't the same thing. So this isn't really a best areas list, it's more of a best fit for real life list, because the best places around Greenville isn't always the prettiest one online. It's the one that lines up with your routine, your budget, your commute, your pace, and the kind of life that you actually want to build. So let's start with downtown Greenville, because there's a reason this area keeps showing up on the best places to live list. And honestly, it earns it. Downtown Greenville has walkability. It's got the energy, restaurants, local shops. Falls Park is right in the middle of everything. Then you have Swamp Rabbit Trail, all the events, the coffee shops, the Main Street feel that gives Greenville much of its personality that people expect from this size city. Downtown Greenville punches way above its weight. And for a lot of buyers, downtown isn't just about fun. It's about convenience, the lifestyle, schools, long-term value, and being close to things that make Greenville feel like Greenville. And that demand holds for a lot of reasons. And a lot of people think about moving here. Well, it's South Carolina, so Greenville should automatically be affordable. And then they start looking near downtown, and they realize pretty quickly Greenville heard that rumor too, and they adjusted accordingly. So you're paying for location, you're paying for lifestyle, you're paying for the convenience, you're paying for walkability, you're paying for the access. So if your budget supports it and you want to be right in the middle of everything, downtown Greenville is honestly one of the strongest options in the area. But if you want more house for less money, if you want a bigger yard, maybe new construction without the downtown price tag, this probably isn't your lane. And that's not a bad thing. It just means you have to be honest about what matters more. Is it the location or maybe space? Now let's take a look at Simpsonville, especially the 29681 side in Five Forks. This is one of the strongest suburban areas around Greenville, full stop. So you have easy access to Woodruff Road, grocery stores, gyms, shopping, local restaurants, medical offices, and even the airport isn't too far away. Basically all the things people use constantly and don't want to be far from. And apparently every human being in Greenville, South Carolina at the exact same time. But convenience honestly matters a lot, because when you're buying a home, it's easy to focus on the kitchen, the floor plan, the backyard, the neighborhood pool, and all the fun stuff, those creature features. But 6 months later, real life questions start showing up. How far is the grocery store? How long does it take to get to dinner? How annoying is it to get to the airport? Can I get to the things that I actually want to use without feeling like it's a huge project? And that's where this part of Simpsonville does really well. I've worked with buyers relocating from out of state who come in thinking, we just want something nice in the suburbs. But once they saw this side of Simpsonville, they understood the school draw, drove the area, and they saw how much more convenience was packed around them. They got laser focused on the zip code quickly. And that tells you something, because what buyers care about today is usually what future buyers are going to care about later. The neighborhoods here, honestly, tend to feel a little bit more clean, more consistent, and they're easy to settle into. People move in and stay. So if you want a suburb convenience, strong-term appeal, and a location that feels practical for day-to-day life, this is going to be a very strong option. Is it the cheapest? Not necessarily. Is Woodruff Road everyone's favorite peaceful driving experience? Of course not, but there's a reason people keep choosing it, and it works for different people. So the east side of Greenville is interesting because it doesn't always get buyers excited online the same way downtown Greenville or Travelers Rest does. It may not have the same shiny headlines, but once buyers actually spend some time there, it tends to win them over pretty quickly. You've got established neighborhoods, mature trees, strong access to downtown, good access to the interstate, and a just more rooted, kind of settled, established feel. Some of the areas feel newer and shinier. The east side feels established. For the right buyer, that's exactly the appeal they're looking for. I had a client who was recently fully convinced they wanted a home near the suburban areas. And on paper, we found something that checked a lot of boxes. It was a new home, good layout, nice finishes, strong neighborhoods. But once we compared it to what they already loved about the east side, they just couldn't make the switch. And that's something about this area. It may not be the flashiest choice, but for the right buyers, the value of convenience, the character, the location, and that established Greenville feel, this is one of the areas to stick to in the market. And that loyalty matters for resale. But trendy is one thing. Consistent demand is another. And the east side has that quiet strength about it. Lake Keowee is in an entirely different category. This really isn't a suburban conversation, it's more about a lifestyle. If lake living is really what you're into and what you want, Lake Keowee is one of the strongest options anywhere around Greenville. The water level tends to stay a little bit higher than Hartwell, and that changes the experience more than a lot of people realize. Dock access, shoreline, year-round usability, the way the property feels throughout the year, those things become a much bigger deal once you actually live there. Online, it's easy to look at lake photos and think, yep, it's got water, I'm good to go. But lake ownership has a lot more layers to it than just pretty pictures. Keowee tends to feel a little bit more polished, more intentional, and in a lot of cases, more investment minded. Plus add in the mountain views and it really becomes compelling for the right buyers. But let's be honest, this is not a budget lake and it's not trying to be. If you want higher end living, stronger long-term appeal, beautiful scenery, and a much more polished experience, Keowee stands out clearly. But if you're looking for the cheapest way to get near water, Keowee may look at your budget and Keowee may politely ask you if you meant somewhere else. Fountain Inn is one of those places that people may look back at and say, that was the moment to get in. Access is better than many buyers expect. You can get to it from 385 quickly. You're close to Simpsonville. You still have connections back and forth toward Greenville, and you're in that phase where development has happened. But prices haven't fully caught up to some of the more established areas nearby. It reminds me of how people used to talk about Simpsonville years ago before it really filled in and took off. There's usually this window where an area starts to get more attention, more restaurants, more development, more demand, but it hasn't fully hit that next level just yet. And that's what makes Fountain Inn interesting. It still has some small town feel, a nice downtown, but it doesn't feel disconnected. Now, it's not going to be perfect for everyone. If you want to be in the middle of everything right now, Fountain Inn may feel like it's a step removed, but if you feel like the idea of getting into an area before it fully takes off and you can buy in a little bit lower, Fountain Inn might be worth looking into. So on the west side of Simpsonville, 29680 is also solid, and I mean that in a good way. It may not always have the same demand or the same recognition as Five Forks or the 29681 side, but it still gives buyers a lot to work with. You still have convenience, you still have access, you still have family-friendly suburban neighborhoods even. And in many cases, you may find a more approachable price point than some of the more competitive areas nearby. The way I describe it is a classic suburban, comfortable, practical, maybe a little more still building its identity. For some buyers, that's exactly what they want, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody needs the trendiest zip code. Some people just want a good neighborhood with reasonable access and a home that fits their budget. If that's your goal, this side of Simpsonville can absolutely make sense. And Easley is better than a lot of people expect. It has a lot of personality, a lot more than it used to. More local energy, a stronger sense of community, and pricing that can still feel a little bit more approachable than most of Greenville County as a whole. I've had buyers bring up Easley because on paper, this feels like a smart middle ground, still close to Greenville, still connected, but not paying the same price for it. And that part can be absolutely true. But here's where Easley can get a little bit tricky. Traffic, the road setup, that's usually one thing that people underestimate. They look at the map and think, oh, that's not really bad, but the map doesn't tell and show you the true experience, what the drive feels like when everybody else is also trying to get to the same places. So if you're seriously considering Easley, don't just visit it once, drive through it a few times because you'll actually be using it morning, afternoon, after work, school traffic, your real routine, because that's the details that decides whether you'll love it or whether you'll be frustrated by it 6 months from now. Easley can be a really smart play. You just need to test the routine, not just the real estate. Spartanburg is probably one of the most misunderstood markets in the upstate. The easiest way to explain it is Spartanburg feels a little like Greenville's younger sibling. There's momentum there. There's investment happening. There's real improvement and opportunity, but it doesn't feel the same as Greenville yet. And depending on the buyer, that's either totally fine or it's a deal breaker. Where Spartanburg really stands out is its affordability. If your budget is tighter, if you want more house for the same exact money, Spartanburg can absolutely open many doors for you. Spartanburg for first-time home buyers, for growing families, or anyone trying to stretch their budget without feeling house poor. But the trade-off is distance from the Greenville core, and the commute on 85 matters than more people think. I've talked to a lot of buyers who like the price advantage of Spartanburg, and I get it. The house looked better, the payment looked better, the options looked a whole lot better. But once we really unpacked what driving to Greenville regularly would look like, they realized that a cheaper price wasn't necessarily worth the lifestyle sacrifice. And for the right buyer, Spartanburg definitely works. You just have to be honest about how connected to Greenville you truly want to be on the day-to-day. If your life is in Spartanburg, great. If your life is mainly in Greenville, that's where you still need to slow down and think things through. Now let's talk about Travelers Rest. This is one of those areas that really catches people off guard the most. And I want to be fair because Travelers Rest is a great fit for the right person. But the right person is more specific than most buyers realize at first. People love the idea of Travelers Rest. They picture small town charm, outdoor lifestyle, mountain access, the Swamp Rabbit Trail, local restaurants, coffee shops, and a quieter pace. And a lot of that is real. That's the reason most people are drawn to it. Travelers Rest sounds perfect online. This is small town charm, the mountain access, the trails, hiking, restaurants. I get it. It reads like a Hallmark movie, but with better hiking shoes. But here's what happens consistently. Buyers get excited online, then they go spend real time there, not just the highlight reel version they saw on the internet, but real time. And what they start noticing isn't just the charm, but its limitations. The downtown is smaller than they expected. The day-to-day conveniences can be a little bit more limited. The drive back and forth to Greenville isn't always as smooth as they pictured. And once you get outside the core, the housing can feel a lot more mixed. Then on top of all that, Travelers Rest is often more expensive than most people expect. So if your dream home is mountain access, the trail system, golf, an outdoor lifestyle maybe, and genuinely a quieter pace, this could absolutely be the best fit for you. But if what you really want is Greenville energy in a smaller package, this is where people get caught off guard the fastest. Travelers Rest isn't really a mini Greenville, it's Travelers Rest. And for the right person, that's the whole point. Anderson usually gets a lot of attention for one main reason, affordability. And if that's your biggest priority, and it may be enough to put you on the list, you can often get more home for your money than what you'd find closer to Greenville. And for some buyers, that matters most. But compared to other areas we've covered, Anderson works best for a price-driven buyer who's genuinely okay being outside the Greenville bubble. It has its own local feel, a small town charm, Lake Hartwell access. It's got its own identity, but it's not where most Greenville movers naturally land first. And that tells you something about the long-term demand. Not that Anderson is bad, it's not. But if your work, your friends, your routine, your weekend plans are mostly tied to Greenville, Anderson may start to feel a little bit further out than you expected. So the question is, are you choosing Anderson because it truly fits your life, or because the price point looks better? Sometimes that answer may be both, but you need to know that before you buy. Lake Hartwell tends to get caught up right next to Lake Keowee because buyers see the lower price point and wonders if it's basically a more affordable version of the same lifestyle. And that's where the difference really shows up. The water levels fluctuate, it's quite a big deal. It can affect dock usage, shoreline, your year-round access, the overall feel of owning there. And buyers don't always appreciate that until they're already in. Some areas around Hartwell can feel a little bit older, maybe a little bit more rural, maybe a little less consistent in the overall development. So it becomes a very different lake experience than Keowee. That doesn't make Hartwell wrong, it just makes it different. And it's a buyer's decision to really understand clearly before they make that kind of commitment. Because lake life sounds simple. You buy a house, you enjoy the water, live peacefully, then you start learning more about water levels, dock access, shorelines, and suddenly you need a second cup of coffee. Hartwell can absolutely work for the right buyer, but don't necessarily compare it to Keowee only on price. Compare the actual ownership experience. That's where the real difference is going to come in. Pickens can be perfect for the right person and genuinely frustrating for the wrong one. If you want land, views, space, maybe a slower pace, and you truly don't mind being further out, Pickens can deliver exactly that. There's people that would choose that lifestyle all day long. They don't want traffic. They don't want the dense neighborhoods. They don't want neighbors right on top of them. They want room to breathe. And Pickens can make a lot of sense for that particular buyer. But if your life still depends on regular Greenville access for work, for appointments, for shopping, restaurants, maybe kid activities, or just the things that you normally enjoy doing, that drive becomes part of your daily reality pretty fast. Some buyers say they wanted peaceful country living until they realize that the nearest target is 3 light years away. And that's the trade-off. I've had clients in more rural areas who love the space, but very quickly became aware of how often they had to run into town for something. And once that becomes your routine, it changes how the whole area feels. Pickens isn't the lowest on the list because it's bad. It's lower because convenience matters. And Pickens is simply not the convenience play. It's the space, the land, the pace, the views. And if that's something you want, great. And if it's not, just be careful whenever you're exploring. Piedmont is one buyers need to think through carefully, especially because new construction can make it look a lot more obvious and a smart deal at first. And I get why buyers are excited. Newer homes, newer neighborhoods, amenities, slightly lower price points. It's easy to look at the end and think, why would I not do this? But the question buyers need to ask isn't just, do I like the house? The question is what this area is going to feel like as more and more homes are being built and more people are using the same roads each and every day. Because the house may be new, but your daily routine still depends on traffic. It depends on access and convenience. The infrastructure hasn't fully caught up with the growth yet, and that gap matters. This feels like a patience play because it becomes stronger over time. Maybe the growth catches up, and maybe the area continues to improve and becomes a better long-term story. But for right now, buyers need to understand and go into it with their eyes wide open. Don't just buy the house, buy the area, or at least make sure you understand what area you're buying into, because new construction can be exciting. Fresh paint, new appliances, builder warranties, and no one else's questionable DIY projects hiding out behind the walls. And that last one honestly deserves way more credit than it gets. But even with all those perks, the location still has to work for your lifestyle. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that the best place I've lived around Greenville isn't the place that sounds best in a video or maybe looks the best on a map. It's the place that fits your lifestyle, your real lifestyle, your commute, your budget, your pace, your routine, what you want to be close to, what trade-offs you're genuinely okay making. That's the part that most people miss. They shop the idea of an area instead of the reality of living there and what that looks like on the day-to-day. And that's usually the difference between loving where you live and spending the next few years thinking, man, I wish I would have really thought this through. And so that brings us back to Traveler's Rest. That's the one that surprises buyers so often. Not because it's bad, it's actually a great place for the right person. But it's a perfect example of why you can't just buy the online version of an area. The online version says small town charm, mountain access, swamp rabbit trail, cute downtowns, a quieter pace, and that's real. But the day-to-day version also includes convenience, commute, pricing, housing variety, and how connected you really still want to be to Greenville. So don't just think, do I like this place? Ask, does this place truly fit the way I live my life? And that question can save you a lot of frustration. So now I'm curious, if you were moving to Greenville or anywhere in the upstate of South Carolina, what would matter most to you? Would it be convenience, maybe schools, walkability, space, price point, mountain access, perhaps even lake life for new construction? Drop your biggest priority in the comments because your priority may completely change which area makes the most sense for you. And if you want help narrowing down the right fit based on your budget, your commute, your lifestyle, and how you actually live day to day, reach out to us at Homes Ever After. And that's the kind of decision we help people make every single day. Not just finding a house, but finding the right fit for your real life. We appreciate you stopping by, and until the next one.